Hi, I'm David Bell. I remember the first time I preached at the Bunnythorpe Methodist Church. It was my second ever sermon as a Methodist minister starting out in the New Zealand connection. Odd name, Bunnythorpe, but in its time famous enough in the corporate world of international pharmaceutical companies. Glaxo was the name of the local dairy cooperative at Bunnythorpe when Smith Kline bought it out. And it's the reputation of some of those companies that's severely tarnished today, as they make enormous profits from inflated prices on drugs that people need to live. Back to Bunnythorpe. It's a small village on the outskirts of Palmerston North, a pleasant provincial centre in the lower North Islands, Manawatu. Anyway, I led the worship occasion, preached the sermon and nervously retired to the handshaking ritual at the church door. One of the church trustees looked at another, rolled his eyes to the heavens and said, not with a laugh but with a hint of menace, I thought, that the trustees did have the power to ban preachers from the pulpit. To this day I don't know what I said that caused the offence, but that fellow did radiate a certain animosity during the next 3 years. But as sure as anything refined the message for the next time, figuring that it wouldn't look so good for a beginning preacher to be banned from his or her appointed pulpit. As the decades whizzed by, I realised that rather than being a mark of failure, it could actually be a measure of some small success when people did take offence in that way. Now, why is that? Consider the two Old Testament prophets, Amos and Hosea. What was truly great within their prophecies was completely unexpected. Amos said that God's judgment will fall on all nations, not just Israel. And Hosea said God is both righteous and forgiving. Neither of these two important principles had been articulated quite that way before in the Jewish religion, and all this took place before 750 BC. Some of you who've read the books of Amos and Hosea have read the prophecies written down some 2,750 years ago. Let me articulate those prophecies again. God and God's judgment is for all the nations, and God is both righteous and forgiving. Put them together and it should make you think. When you read those, you're aware you are speaking from something that is as ancient as days and yet as fresh as today. Now, Karl Marx is in the prophetic line of Amos. Like Amos, he had a basic concern for injustices. And his concern spread across all nations. Marx was an internationalist. Yet against all that, Marx denied God and said in an infamous phrase that religion was the opiate of the people. So what right have I got to call him one of God's prophets? Indeed, some of you have fought directly in wars that owe their intellectual base to Marxism. So you might curse me for calling Marx a prophet of God. Korea, Vietnam, and many conflicts in Latin America and Africa have their origin in Marxist theory. The horrors unleashed in Russia and China are all too well documented to repeat here. Yet there's a side to Marxism that everyone in New Zealand enjoys. If you've ever worked for anyone else, you enjoy paid holidays. The concept of fair old age pensions and medical assistance in times of trouble and need directly stem from Marxist analysis of the need to change the conditions for the poorest sections of society. There's no difference between Marx's concern for the unjust treatment of the poor and what Amos said in God's name thousands of years beforehand. Marx also had an extraordinary influence in unexpected ways. In 1843, he married Jenny from an aristocratic Prussian family. In 1844, he met Friedrich Engels, who remained his friend and benefactor until Marx's death. In 1849, Marx was expelled from the country of his birth, Germany, as a stateless person, which explains in part why he regarded himself as a citizen of the world. He went to live in London and from there produced his great book, Capital, along with other books and the Communist Manifesto. He had 6 children, 3 of whom died in early childhood due to lack of money, medicine and food. At certain times, the Marx family survived for weeks at a time on small quantities of bread and potatoes. His friend Engels was not only a gifted writer but also a highly successful businessman in the family cotton trade based in Manchester. And Engels bankrolled the Marx family during their years of poverty. In fact, most years Marx earned up to 3 times the average worker's wage. But he and his wife were notoriously bad managers with personal finances. Engels was the opposite. It's estimated that in his life, Engels gave, in today's terms, over £100,000 sterling to Marx. Engels also wrote an expose of the horrors of conditions in Manchester and practiced what he preached in terms of alleviating poverty through societal change. In one of life's strange ironies, Marx managed to get a loan through his wife's cousin, Leon Phillips. You all know his products today. He founded what has become the world's biggest electronics manufacturer, Philips. Marx wrote the classic words, quote, "The workers have nothing to lose but their chains. They have a world to gain. Workers of the world, unite," unquote. Later on, Marx formulated the classic formula of socialism, from each according to his abilities, to each according to his needs. He also denounced exploitation. Here in New Zealand in the 1880s and 1890s, there was sweated labour. And one of the greats of the Presbyterian clergy, Rutherford Waddell, was instrumental in getting it stopped. What savage irony! We're seeing it emerge all over again in this country today. When people told me over decades, don't preach about politics or political issues, I can only wonder if they ever read their Bibles. We won't recognise God's prophets in our time if we haven't seen God's prophets at work in Bible times. Marx came to fame in 1917, and Lenin used Marxist philosophy to offer the communist system after the bloody Russian Revolution. Then Mao Zedong in China and a host of others afterwards, all claiming to be the true followers of Marx. So he found both fame and infamy decades after his death. Infamy. Yet he was a prophet who called for justice, righteousness and mercy. Maybe today another prophet is needed. No, not another prophet, but many prophets. Is God calling ordinary Christians to rise up and unite to make the world's medicines more cheaply and readily available? Exorbitant profits are not moral in any day and age. Visit the Far Country page in kiwiconnexion.nz to find out what to do. It's a live link here on YouTube and repeated in the More section about the video below. See you next week, same time, same channel. Subscribe with YouTube, purple yellow button below right, and thanks for watching.